So I'm here with Jennifer Louden, and she is a writer and a thought leader, in my opinion. She's out there really trying to explore the world of who we are and how to be in the world in a way that is both, I love your terminology, savoring where we are and also doing what we can to save the world, to be a gift to the world. So I would love to start with, if you really could just name how your relationship with money, not how, but what it looks like as an image, as an object.
You artist, you.
I know.
When you asked me that question, the image that came was a heart, and then sometimes it's in a box. And the box is like a cage, like a shark's cage, or a milk carton, or something steel, as old milk cartons.
Oh yeah.
But so yes, and that it can be free or it can be encaged, if that's a word, encaged.
I think encaged is a word. So if money is something, it's in a way you're saying it's sort of a piece of being able to love.
Yeah,
it's related to love.
If I think of the symbol of it, it's just another form of love.
And that sometimes it's encaged and sometimes it's free.
Yeah, and I think the cage is of my own stories and my family's stories and my fears and wanting things that I don't really need, those kind of things. Yeah.
What is one story that you remember? It can sometimes our stories, they seem very small, but they were a significant moment that shaped you.
I grew up with a father who was very successful. I mean, not successful by our very successful, Facebook billionaire terms, but successful in the 70s and 80s, and 60s and 70s, 80s, but was older. He was 43 when I was born, so he was born in 1919, and he lived through the Depression very, aware and as a young boy. So I think that feeling of I'm really comfortable, but there's some possibility that it may not last or it's not solid, has really haunted me. And my dad would have, some of the dreams that he would tell me are dreams of living in a world where a loaf of bread is $5, which now we don't think anything of, but compared to him growing up where a loaf of bread was 10 or 20 cents. Not being able to take care of mom. And my dad was 43 when I was born, so he had a great sense of his mortality. And I grew up with that sense of mortality. Will there be enough? And now I see it echoed in my mom, who has Alzheimer's, and we're moving her into assisted living next month. And the assisted living is actually quite affordable. I think it's a great deal. And she's like, can we afford it? We can't afford it. So just seeing how that sometimes plays out in my own, just like this vague feeling of doom.
Yeah, no kidding. That's very powerful. So one of the conversations you and I had just briefly was about receiving.
Yes.
What is your sensibility? What's your sense around how receiving, and it is about money, but it's also about just our capacity to let something in. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was on the phone this morning with my friend Hiro Boga, and she was at my wedding, which was just a few weeks ago, and she's just had this. She had a profound experience at the wedding of love, and the way that she described that experience to me just kind of broke open another layer of seeing myself supported by these people, these 90 people who came, and a big story that I have is of not belonging, that I don't belong, that nobody really likes me, and so loving Bob and going through this public wedding and spending $10,000 on a wedding was like broke open a whole nother level of receiving for me, and has helped me see how Twitter-pated I get around receiving and support, and how I get into this place where my story is I'm going to be betrayed. My story is something, I'm still grappling with it, but I can feel how it's shifting, and I can feel how vulnerable it is to receive. You really have to let go. You really can't hold a part of you in the back of your mind going, well, I'll receive this much, but I'm going to pay you back tomorrow. And I'm going to pay you back big time, right? And I just see how automatic that is for me, and how there's just this great relief in letting go. And I'm starting to see how that's related to the difference between following my soul's calling for what it needs, what it's calling me to move through next, versus my willing things to happen.
Right.
So it's a very,
make it.
feminine, very more feminine, more holistic way of approaching. And I get whiffs of it. And the wedding was a huge part of that. And I never would have known that in a million years. I just thought, it'd be nice to have a party.
But it is very vulnerable to just be in that space.
Oh my God, the week before the wedding, I was having meltdown after meltdown after meltdown. And I finally woke up one day and I went, oh my God, I've asked all these people to come. This is huge. It's like a major effort on people's, not from driving from the island, but, people flew from Toronto and from Marianne came from New Zealand. She was already here, but, people made a lot of effort, and that felt very vulnerable. And I think that's part of that receiving, is letting people make an effort on your behalf and trusting that
it's okay.
It's okay.
It's not about repaying it.
Right. It's not about understanding it even. Anyway, I can feel it in my body, how it's just like kind of reconstituting me. I don't know how articulate I am about it.
No, that worked. So, is there a moment where you hit a specific you offered a program or you had a workshop and all of a sudden
a certain amount of money?
Yeah, like you just had this like flood of money that sort of was unexpected, like you hoped for it, but it just kind of... Do you remember a moment like that where you kind of went, holy shit, like I just made a lot of money?
It was back in the old days. Yeah, it was back in the old days. I would get the old days were the 90s. In the 90s, that's when I made a lot of money off of writing, and I would get these big advances, and and my books were bestsellers in Germany. And I got big royalty checks, $50,000, $100,000 royalty checks. And I wouldn't know. It was like opening the mail, like winning the lottery, because you didn't know. This is before electronics and the internet, so you just didn't know when the lottery. You knew there was a general time in April, a check is going to come. I have no idea how much it's going to be for.
Right.
So those were a couple of years there of just like, wow. Or getting hired to do talks for $8,000 or $10,000. And people, just offering me that.
You're like, I'll talk for an hour and you're going to pay me what?
Right. And then kind of figuring out, in fact, I'm going to spend 2 weeks getting ready for this because I'm going to obsess about it, and I'm going to have to, travel, and it actually isn't that much money.
Do my hair.
Exactly, right, which is always the hardest part for me, hair and makeup. What am I going to wear? And obsess over that.
A lot of energy.
Yeah, a lot of energy. Anyway, so those are probably the years when I went, this is... And you're right, every year that I made, more money, it really does expand your sense of what's possible. And I've seen that happen with friends who've been way more successful than I am, when they hit the $1 million mark a year, and they're like, and this just becomes routine. Like, I've never gotten near there. Yeah.
Do you remember, so how did that, what's the word I want to use? How did that inform those kind of stretches? How did that inform the way you did your business into the 2000s and when you started to shift, because obviously advances aren't what they used to be.
No. If I do write this next book I'm thinking about writing, I'll probably get a $30,000 or $40,000 advance. Won't begin.
And that's lucky.
Yeah, I won't begin to put in the time that I need to write the book, so you have to do some other way to a Kickstarter. So it's like hedonistic adaptation. So it's like, that's lovely falling in love, and now I'm adapted to that, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing. Like I'm adapted to, I have to have $100,000 in profit every year, and it will happen. So it's just a sense of that's what I can do, and I think that's why it's important sometimes if you want more to stretch past that. So that's how I experienced it. I hope that doesn't sound law of attraction-y. So I always thought about being a steward. I always thought about, but here's the shadow of it, my friend. The shadow of it is, I have to take care of this money because I can't trust myself to make enough. Because I'm not really that smart and I'm really not that capable. So I have a big story that I'm a fluke, and anything I've ever made is a fluke. And I got lucky.
Not really repeatable. Can't really control
And it doesn't help that my first book was by far my biggest bestseller. My other books have sold well to very well, but that book was a phenomenon. So, and that happens, but then it can become it happens to a lot of people.
That becomes a story.
It becomes a story that like, all of these other, it's like my dad's story. It's going to go away. There's feeling doom.
Yeah. Did you listen to Elizabeth Gilbert's
Yes, exactly. You just read my mind.
Great.
Yeah, this is it. And
people
how do
are like, what are you going to do next? And
right.
she's like, I'm only 32 or whatever she was.
35, I think.
Yeah. And she's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
But they were serious.
Right.
Like, how are you going to? She's like, I'm not going to try to.
I'm not going to.
I'm not good at it. It's never going to.
Right.
That was a fluke, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what she felt like.
Yeah.
But that is hard. Because it's not like a ramping up to this great, epic space in your world. It's like, whoop!
Right.
And then, everything else it pales a little bit by comparison.
But in learning to live with that and I think for my soul, it's been a great lesson because part of my lesson is to detach anything I offer from how it is perceived and how it is received. To go back to the receiving theme.
Perceived and received.
Yes, and that's what that means. Do people like it? Do people pay for it? So that, people always ask me, what was it like to be on Oprah? And why did you say it was such a bad experience? It wasn't her. It was, I thought this meant I made it. I thought, I was looking for that external,
validation.
Yeah, and that external validation is like the kiss of death for me in particular. It's to unhook from all of that. And so, in some ways, it's very hysterical that I would have this great success at 28 and then be like, fuck.
That wasn't it.
No, it's like, what do I want to create? What's true for me? What's desirable for me? And then, of course, looking at what does the world need? You can't just be about yourself. It's got to be about that sweet spot, the two come together.
Yeah.
Right. And then taking care of myself with appropriate marketing and pricing and all of that stuff. But if it doesn't come from that really deep, true place, it's not going to work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
And so really so what you're saying happened with being on the Oprah Show. What happened there was that it was supposed to feel a certain way in your own internal story, but afterwards...
Oh, I walked off that set feeling so depressed.
Was it not a good interview?
The experience itself, I felt a little. There was another thing going on, which is they had me come on as a guest for the women's retreat book, but the real purpose of the episode, or the part of the show, was to talk about women who are afraid to eat lunch alone. And I could have cared less.
Yeah.
And I had a young child,
these two things together.
and I'm like, bring a book. You're gonna sit down and eat a meal by yourself?
Seriously?
My kid never stops crying. I would really like to do that. Now let's talk about what's really important. So some of it was setting myself up, and this is another life lesson for me that I have to learn over and over again. I'm allowed to hold out for what I want, even if I don't get it. And that's really been hard for me. And every time I give up on what I really want and settle, without really deciding, that's okay. But it's more like, well, that's the best I can get, or I should do it because they want to do it, or... It's that needy, please give me something, from that place.
A little desperate instead of a place.
I'm always don't flourish, and I hurt. And that was what the Oprah experience was like for me. So it would have been very different to go on like, oh, cool, I'm here. Oh, let's talk about this. But it was more like, oh my God, this is so important. And does it make sense?
Right. Because then you've invested so much. Your expectations are so high for yourself.
Right, and they're the wrong expectations. They're unmeetable expectations.
So tell me about a time when you felt like your earning and what you offered really met. Like there was this real sense of those things were in alignment.
Oh, it's such a question. My writer's retreat in Taos that I've been leading for like 11 or 12 years, that feels like that for me. There's a way that I'm able to, I've created a container there where people really get what they want. And I'm able to show up and just love the heck out of people, and it just feels really effortless. And it's not like I'm making $1 million doing it, but I walk away from the week feeling, oh, that was good. That's a good return.
It's worth the effort.
It all feels like really right. So that's a good example. I feel that way about Teach Now, a program I created with my friend Michelle. That it's like, wow, that is an amazing. But sometimes I feel like I'm giving too much there, so I've had to watch that, which is one of the things I teach in Teach Now. Don't over-provide. Like, I might be over-providing a little bit there.
I have that in there.
I wonder why I teach that. So that sometimes feels a little wonky. That's a really good question for me to carry forward. Where is that exchange feeling just right? Because my thing is to just jump in with all 10 toes and all 10 fingers and just give, and not really sit and think, what would feel right? If that's more receiving for me.
It is.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you said Taos, because my experience of you at Taos was that you were so in your absolute perfect zone. It felt effortless to be around it. Like I felt like you were just present.
Yeah.
And that it was your presence, not your teaching.
Right.
It was your capacity to be present. That was such a gift.
Yeah, it feels like that when I'm doing that. I mean, I feel like that in other retreat settings too. And then that's part of, what kind of twists me around the axle, because I don't have to market Taos, but I have to market everything else that I offer. And it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Lots of people offer retreats now,
Right.
Again, it's something I was very early on doing, and, so then I think, and this becomes a question for me that I'm living right now. So I love doing that in that setting, and I do really great work in that setting, but if I can't fill those with ease, do I give it up?
Right.
And then what's the essence that I can do someplace else?
I agree with you. I'm still living with that myself.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
And I don't know the answer, but I guess that's where the law of attraction stuff or whatever kind of falls down on me, or like, do what you love and the money will follow. It's like,
not so much.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
That's in my book. I say,
yeah,
not so much.
Yeah.
Like there's still work involved here.
Yeah, it just doesn't always pan out. And I do know that a lesson that I'm learning right now is I can't compare the me I am at 50 to the me I was at 28. And I can't compare the me I am at 50 to the young women out there who are 20 and 30 and 35. And they're like having the success that I had in my 20s and 30s. I have to embrace what I have to offer now and what has heart and meaning for me right now.
Right. Do you have any money rituals? Anything that you do, whether it's around spending or receiving or how you save or when you write, anything? Do you have anything that you do that you just would share as kind of a grounding tool?
When I find myself writing a check, which I still do, paper checks.
Amazingly.
Amazingly. And I'm feeling, I don't want to write this check. I really make an effort to be grateful and to think about what I've received and write a little smiley face on it or something, and or something in the memo line. So I notice if I'm feeling uptight about spending that money. And Bob was great about that around the wedding. He was just so great when I'd be like, oh my God, no, we can't do that, or oh, it's going to be so much. And he would just like, whoa, this is our wedding. It's great. This is fantastic, So that was a great reminder of choice. Like I've chosen to put on a wedding, and we're not like, being ridiculous about it. It was very much a do-it-yourself affair, but yeah, it's okay it's learning to make those choices and fully step into them. And then when stuff happens, like the week that we got married, the washer and the dryer needed $450 worth of repairs, to just go, isn't it great that we can pay that money? Isn't it great that we can pay that? And something else happened that week. Isn't it great that we can write this check?
Yeah, that we've done well enough with our money that we actually have the money.
Exactly. And yes, I would rather spend $450 on new clothes, but I'm having a washer
right there with you.
And I have a dryer that doesn't almost explode one night.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for it's really fun talking. And
I love it. Love talking about money. It's so important.
It is important, and I think that the more we can bring it out and start really having the conversation, not be so afraid to say, how do you handle that?
And also not having the thing that I don't like is the conversations about money, about look at me, look how much money I made, therefore you should listen to me. And that to me is conflating two completely different things. So you're good at making money, so if I want to listen to you about how you made money, maybe, but not even that, because so often the way people make money on the internet doesn't translate to how I'm going to make money. But I really find it offensive when it comes to spiritual principles, or being someone who claims to be a spiritual teacher and they're linking it to, you should listen to me because I make a lot of money as a spiritual teacher. It's like, oh, no. I want to listen to you because you've stayed married for a long time, because you're kind to your children, because you helped your children through an addiction, because you go out and serve the world in a way that really doesn't burn you out but helps people. I want to listen to you because you practice every day. You've meditated every day for 30 years. I don't want to listen to you because you make a lot of money. So that's the other thing about money. And it's interesting to live with Bob, who's worked in the nonprofit world his whole life in conservation. And he's like, I'll come in and say, oh, so-and-so's making $1 million a year because it says so on their website. He's like, first of all, how do you know that they really are? How much profit are they making?
Right.
Versus how much,
how much they're grossing,
net, right? Or gross, how much net versus gross. And then why are they telling people? And I think so having more honest conversations about money is what I'm interested in versus like, look at me living in my castle.
Yeah.
Driving down the street in my limousine.
And that is such an important, when you hear somebody, you know, somebody has grossed $1 million and they're an entrepreneur like they are, it's true. They may only have netted $100,000.
Oh my God, that would be awful.
Because of how many subcontractors they have and how many other costs they have. I mean, we don't know those pieces.
Right.
And so when somebody tells me I have $1 million or $2 million company, I'm like, that's really not what matters.
No, how much are you keeping?
Yeah, how much are you keeping and how good of a job are you doing?
Right. And the other thing I always want to know is how are you treating the people? How are you treating your subcontractors?
Yeah.
How much are you paying? Are you giving bonuses and you know,
are you sharing it?
Are you sharing it in a way that feels fair to you? And also I see friends who are having success who are overgiving. It's like, no, this is your company. This is your thing. You created this. You created this content. It gets to take care of you. You don't have to give the world away to be a good person. There's a lot of going back and forth that I see with people who I'm intimate with in their companies. And then, of course, there's all the stories that we've run into in the internet where people who have made fortunes, but they have spent them making the fortune, and never tell anybody that, and have driven their people into the ground and
lost them. I mean, there's just so many stories of people that have had this huge, you know,
had $1 million
burst, $1 million, $2 million, whatever, you know, just like, and it's like the Oprah stories. It's like, yeah, it was this amazing person, and then boom, you know. Janine Roth is a great example. She wrote a whole book about it. Right. But, you know.
That was Bernie. Bernie
Madoff. Get away to Bernie Madoff. But the story.
Yes, it is. Those returns are too good to be true.
They are. It's true.
And yet, I can imagine that I would have done the same thing to some degree. I wouldn't have given him all my money, but I can imagine if somebody at a dinner party was telling me, oh, I know this guy can get you, 14% every year.
And you just want to believe it.
You want to believe it.
Right.
You want the candy wagon. You want the money tree. Everybody does. That's why the law of attraction stuff is so popular.
I know. That's why people spend money they don't have to get it. It's crazy.
I'm really proud that I have no debt. I have a very small mortgage on this house. I live within my means, and I provided before Bob and I got married. I provided for my family. I took care of my family. As like a writer. I can do it as a writer. Right. I mean, that's insane,
That's amazing. It's brilliant.
Yeah. But I'm proud of that.
Yes, and you should be. And it's not that, so you had a really successul book young, but you also didn't sit on that and just say that's it. No. Or this should last me.
No, you gotta work hard. You gotta work hard. Working on that story.
Yeah, but what's a cool thing I think is like, why did you write a book about? Retreats.
Right, and the first book was about comfort.
It's like, I'm probably writing that because I need to do it.
Exactly.
Which is why I write about money.
Yeah.
It's like trying to heal those money stories is such an important piece of it. So.
It is. Yeah.
All right, thank you for being part of this.